Schnellfahrstrecke Köln was one of 3 routes included in the Train Sim World 2 package, alongside the London Underground Bakerloo line and an unnecessary rehash of Sandpatch Grade, the latter being the very first route ever made for TSW. 3 years on from SKA's release, I thought it was about time I inspected the route and published my thoughts on it, so here we go. Köln to Aachen was launched in August 2020, and as the name implies, this DLC only includes the 70-kilometre long linear route from Köln to Aachen in the German state of North Rhine-Westphalia. The first section of this line opened in 1839, and it has been electrified since 1966. These days, it's not only useful to local and regional travellers, but it provides an important link for international services to and from Belgium or the Netherlands. Despite the sheer variety of services on this route in real life, the DLC only comes with 2 electric multiple units, namely the Deutsche Bahn BR406 ICE 3M and BR442 Talent 2. The ICE 3M was new to the game, while we already had a variant of the Talent 2 with the Rapid Transit add-on, but that was the 3-car BR1442 in the silver S-bahn Mitteldeutschland livery. The Köln to Aachen unit is a 4-car BR442 variant in bog-standard DB Regio colours. Meanwhile, the original TS Classic version of the Talent 2 only includes a 4-car BR2442 variant with region-specific Verden-Felsbahn decals, so it would only look realistic on München to Garmisch-Partenkirchen, a route that I'd like to see remade in TSW. Yes, all 100.6 kilometres of it. As a brief aside, I was, and still am, annoyed when I realised that Dovetail only bothered to include the 3-car Talent 2 with the Rapid Transit add-on, despite the fact that the S-bahn Mitteldeutschland system also uses 15 examples of the 4-car variant in real life, alongside 36 examples of the 3-car variant. They should update the route to include that missing 4-car variant, as the route just doesn't look right without them. This EMU is noticeably improved from the Leipzig variant, at least where the motor sounds are concerned, but she still has the same annoying horn bug as the Leipzig unit, where the low tone sound briefly cuts out, while the later Dresden unit has this problem sorted. I always thought that the motor sounds were far too quiet in the cab of the Leipzig unit, but these are much louder on the Köln unit, and I do prefer driving the latter. But as I am not too familiar with the real Talent 2s, I cannot verify how accurate these motor sounds are. Because the base route only has ICE and regional services represented by default, the route looks awful and unrealistically quiet in timetable mode if you haven't got any other German add-ons. The ICE 3M is used on a Frankfurt to Brussels service that only runs once every 2 hours in each direction, and doesn't stop anywhere between Köln and Aachen. While the Talent 2 runs the hourly RE9 service from Aachen to Siegen. This service only stops at Köln-Ehrenfeld and Horem before reaching Düren. Then it stops at all stations to Aachen Hauptbahnhof except Eilendorf. You will need to buy other add-ons in order to run freight and S-bahn services on this route. Main Spessartbahn and the S-bahn Köln BR423 are the most suitable choices. Although Dovetail didn't bother properly altering the BR423 model to accurately depict the Köln variant. They just rehashed and slightly altered the livery of the existing S-bahn München variant, whose refurbished interior is completely inaccurate for the S-bahn Köln system. Besides the aforementioned RE9, ICE and S-bahn services, you can also see locomotive-hauled trains on this route, as they represent the RE1 service from Aachen to Hamm-Westphalia. While this service is often hauled by BR146-2 locomotives in real life, they don't always use the same Doppelstockwagen coaches that Dovetail have reused in too many routes ever since the original Ruhrsieg Nord add-on. That was released in 2018, by the way. And clearly, Dovetail doesn't realise or care about the fact that there are more than just one type of double-decker coach in Germany. And they don't need to be thrashing the same model so many times that it could give Bon Jovi's overrated and certainly overplayed Living on a Prayer a run for its money. Surely I'm not the only TSW player who would appreciate the addition of more double-decker German coaches. For example, there's another version of the Doppelstockwagen where the doors are above the bogies instead of between them. And there's no reason why that variant shouldn't have been included, especially since it is already present in TS Classic. I think this is the variant that Dovetail was supposed to include in the Hamburg to Lübeck add-on, instead of being lazy and ignoring community suggestions. While the ICE 3M does have changeable destination displays, you only have two options to choose from, either Frankfurt am Main or Brussels, and Dovetail has not updated this thing to have more options, despite the ICE 3M now layering onto at least two other routes in timetable mode, namely Hamburg to Lübeck and Riesa to Dresden. The Talent 2 suffers from the same issue, with her only destination options being Aachen or Siegen, but this variant of the BR442 doesn't appear on any other routes in TSW, so the limited destination selection isn't as big of a problem as it is on the ICE 3M. Perhaps the most notable feature of this route is the high-speed section between Düren and Köln-Ehrenfeld, where the ICE 3M can travel at up to 250 km per hour. That's a little over 4 km a minute. The high-speed section was set up in 2002, with new tracks for the S-bahn services being built parallel to the high-speed lines. Once you get past Düren, the maximum speed limit goes down to only 160 km per hour. The ability to finally do high-speed running was a big part of the marketing prior to TSW2's release. Too bad it was only on part of a 70 km long linear route that takes less than an hour to complete in the ICE 3M. While the route mostly runs through fairly boring terrain, especially between Köln-Ehrenfeld and Düren, there are three notable landmarks to make the journey a little bit more interesting. Firstly, there's the famous cathedral right next to Köln Hauptbahnhof. Not too far east of Düren, you cross the unusual triangle-shaped Dreigertbrücke Bridge. And just outside Aachen Hauptbahnhof, you cross the Bertscheide Viaduct, and Aachen is less than 7 km from the border with the Netherlands. Missed opportunity for an international route there. There's also an abandoned station somewhere between Düren and Stolberg-Rheinland Hauptbahnhof, but I can't remember its name. The stations all have working passenger information screens, but I noticed that, for some reason, the screens on Platform 1 at Langerwehe are still blank. Flashbacks to the original TSW 2020 intensify. While Aachen Hauptbahnhof has a distinctive and well-modelled overall roof, the lights are off in daylight, which makes it impossible to properly see the ceiling detail, Instead, it looks like you're staring into a blank void of nothing. The scenery around this station is also pretty lousy. Even on Casinostrasse, the street right next to the station, you will see the same 2 or 3 buildings copied and pasted several times over. I also noticed that, for whatever reason, there is an asset from CN Oakville subdivision that was reused for the sidings just east of Köln-Müngersdorf Technology Park. It's the same one that you see at Burlington, where you shunt the tank wagons to be loaded with ethanol, although most of the valve controls and other details have been stripped off for this rehash on SKA. There's an annoying issue with the Talent too, in that the lead unit will spawn with a driving coach that has a first-class section and a pantograph at both ends if you load a timetable mode service at Köln Hauptbahnhof, when it's supposed to have a first-class section and a pantograph at only one end. I'm surprised, but simultaneously not surprised, that Dovetail still hasn't bothered to fix this issue for the Köln unit, and it's not present on the more recent 3-car variant in the Riesa to Dresden route. But I have discovered a workaround, where you can spawn on foot at Köln Hauptbahnhof and take over the service when it pulls in. While the Talent 2 is a realistic choice for this route, since they do run the RE9 service in real life, there's at least 2 other locomotives Dovetail could have included, either with the route or as separately sold add-ons. Those locomotives are the BR111, BR120, or BR146-0, as there is photographic evidence on Flickr to prove that they've also run the RE9 service to Aachen with double-decker coaches. Considering that we've got both the BR146-0 and BR146-2 in TS Classic, I find it strange that we still don't have the original *0 variant in TSW yet. While the BR146-2 has been in the game ever since main Spessartbahn's release in February 2019. The ICE-3M is also a prototypical choice for this route, as she is capable of running on the different electrification systems in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Although these units switch voltages while stopped in the platform at Aachen Hauptbahnhof, that feature is largely useless in TSW since it's right at the very start or end of your journey. It's less realistic to drive German trains with the convoluted PZB and CFAS systems disabled, but I leave them deactivated anyway because I could never understand how they work, especially when it comes to PZB. Trying to work out that thing is like trying to decipher the lyrics of a Pink Floyd song. The ICE-3M has the handy AFB cruise control system, which I do like to use if I remember that it's even there. One downside of AFB is that it doesn't really work when you're going downhill, but this isn't much of an issue on this route as it is mostly level. You certainly don't get gradients anywhere near as steep as the 1 in 50 Spessart ramp on the main Spessartbahn. The steepest grade I noticed on SKA was only 1 in 100, just as you're passing Frechen-Königsdorf on the S-bahn line. But driving the ICE-3M on this route is somewhat pointless, because all you can do with her is that fast non-stop run from Köln to Aachen or vice versa. It doesn't help that it only takes around 32 to 35 minutes to cover the full route in this thing. And on the high speed side, this route kind of suffers from the same problem as Marseille to Avignon. Rather annoyingly, there is no dedicated manual available for this route, so there are certain functions, like turning on the interior lights, that you have to figure out yourself. When you load a service in timetable mode, the ICE-3M spawns with the pantograph down, despite that being unrealistic when you're taking over a service at an intermediate stop, rather than the terminus of Frankfurt am Main or Brussels. You have to raise the pantograph and close the main circuit breaker yourself. Only then can you turn the interior lights on. Trust Dovetail to still not fix annoying bugs, like the pantograph being down at the start of the service, that are still in the game after 3 years. To summarise, I am disappointed in this route's short length and a complete lack of any branch lines, but it's still unique with the contrasting sections east and west of Düren. And as long as you've got main Spessartbahn, the S-bahn Köln BR423 and other suitable add-ons, this can be a decently interesting route with a lot of service variation. Now if only Dovetail could actually bother to make a BR423 variant that's actually accurate for this region, and extend the route coverage through to the Netherlands as well.